thankful for that. How about you? So today is the third week of our 7-week series based on the book, Thou Shalt Not Suffer, 7 Steps to Living a Life of Joy. And each week what we've been doing is basing our Sunday lesson and also our Sacred Circle curriculum on one of the steps to living a life of joy that's outlined in the book. So the first week, we started out, if you recall, if you were here, we started out by firing our old God. And the idea kind of freaked some people out. They thought maybe it was going to make the old God mad, right? So, yeah, they had this new concept of God, and it was working for them, but they didn't want to take any chances by pissing that guy off, right? So, but what we found was that when we did the exercises, and we found that it was actually very freeing to let go of the old concept and to make room for the new concept, one that more clearly reflects who we are now. So the lesson had us actually write a termination letter to the old God that started out with the words, "Effective immediately, your services are no longer needed." After we did that, then we wrote a God for Hire advertisement that listed all of the qualities, all of the aspects that we want and need in our higher power. Things like compassion and love and enthusiasm and kindness and strength and non-judgment and power and light and energy and joy, you name it. In other words, we wrote this ad, it was symbolic, of course, so that we could make our new concept of God fit who we are now. Not the God that was handed down to us by our parents, by our teachers, by our old centers, churches, anything like that. It's very powerful. Then last week, we bit the bullet and we looked at the sometimes sensitive topic of forgiveness. And we learned that the act of forgiving someone is a definite step to a life of joy. Because as long as we're holding on to those resentments against anyone or anything, we are effectively holding joy at bay. In other words, the resentment is a barrier between us and the joy that we're seeking. I used this quote last week, but I just loved it so much, I loved the picture, that I decided to bring it back again. To forgive is to set a prisoner free and discover that the prisoner was you. So, concluding our service last week, we went through a guided meditation where we put our focus on forgiving 7 areas of our lives. Forgiving God, forgiving ourselves, forgiving our family, our loved ones or our intimate relationships, acquaintances, establishment like the government, and then the collective consciousness, those things that have been fed to us throughout our lives that may or may not be true. So we really worked on forgiving those 7 areas of our lives, and folks told me that it was a pretty powerful process. And the good news is, if you want to listen to these talks, you all may not know this, but like if you missed one or it's like, oh, that sounded interesting, you can go to our website at calgarycsl.org and just go to where it says watch and listen, and we've got all those talks up on YouTube. So you can, if you kind of want to get caught up, that's a good way of doing it. So our topic today, as you could tell from Reverend Marjorie's topic or reading that she did, our topic today is love yourself madly. You love it? I just love that title. It reminds me of old-time metaphysicians. And I tried to find out who coined the phrase, and I couldn't find out. But old-time metaphysicians would teach their students to hug themselves and say, "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me." So you know I'm going to make you do it, right? So hug yourself. Come on, play with me here. Hug yourself. Let's do it. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful me. It feels good, doesn't it? You feel a little silly. You bet feel a little silly, but it's good. Because, folks, the truth is, each one of us is wonderful and deserving of appreciation and love right here, right now. Not when you've lost the weight, when you've finished the class, when you've reached the goal, when you've found the person, when you've bought the house, when you've meditated the meditation, when you've exercised, when you've stopped the bad habit, or any of the other myriad things that we tell ourselves we have to do in order to be loved and appreciated. We deserve love from ourselves, most of all, simply because we are here. We live, we breathe. We have something to offer the world by our very existence. We add to the tapestry, to the depth, to the richness of life, right here, right now, exactly as we are. How's that for loving ourselves madly? It feels good, doesn't it? You bet it does. Now, there may be some of you who are sitting there thinking to yourself, who does she think she is? Just like Marjorie read a little bit about this. How can she stand up there and talk about loving ourselves madly? That's so arrogant. That's so self-centered. It's much better to be humble and modest. And you know, I might agree with you if I thought that the small me, the human me, the flawed me was all I was. I wouldn't stand up here and encourage all of us to love ourselves madly if I did not believe that we were infinitely more than that. I can stand up here and say these things because I know that each one of us is God in expression. Each one of us has that spark of the divine within us. Each one of us is here by divine appointment. We are here on purpose. It is not an accident. I can say that because I believe in the very depths of my being that God, whatever you call it, is all there is. All there is. Not God and something else. God is all there is. Our founder, Ernest Holmes, put it this way. He says, everything in the universe is a unique individualization or expression of the one thing, which is the cause of all things. You should become aware that the one creative power is expressing in you in a unique way, and that it is always pressing against you, seeking a fuller outlet of its infinite possibilities. You are a special creation of God, and you have full access to the unlimited potential of infinite intelligence. Can I get a woo-hoo? Yeah. In other words, everything there is comes from that source, comes from that substance, comes from that mind, comes from that energy. It is all made up of the same thing, and that includes us. And who we are, and what we are doing with this life, is who and what we are supposed to be doing and being. We are here in life school, and we are doing what we're supposed to be doing. So to treat ourselves as anything other than a precious and deserving, beautiful expression of that is simply wrong. It is mistaken thinking. It is erroneous thinking. I'm going to use a word you never hear me use. It is a sin, ladies and gentlemen. Now, sin in our teaching doesn't mean, oh, you looked at somebody you weren't supposed to, or, oh, I ate pork, or, whatever. A sin, in Jesus' time, in the language of Aramaic, which was the language that he spoke, means to miss the mark. It's an archery term. So if I pull back my bow and I go for the target or the animal or whatever it is and I miss, that is a sin. And so when we are not treating ourselves as the precious beings we are, it is mistaken thinking. We are committing a sin. It is dishonoring that which created us and that which lives and moves and has its being in us. You've all heard the quote, I'm sure, by Marianne Williamson. It's very famous, from her book of Return to Love. It illustrates it so beautifully. She wrote, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There's nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people will not feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We are born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It is not just in some of us, it is in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give permission to others to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. So I want that to sink in for just a minute. We were born to make manifest the glory of God within us. It's not just in some, it is in everyone. When I was very new in this teaching, I was very enthusiastic. And I was trying to explain to people what it is that I meant. And I would say, okay, so here's what I think it means. I think that, okay, God is in everything and God is in everyone. And so the greatest honor that we can give to God is to love and honor ourselves. This is from a beginning Science of Mind student. The greatest honor and glory that we can give God is to love and honor ourselves. And now I take it a step further because I've been around a really long time and I can say things like this. How dare we not love ourselves? How dare we not treat ourselves as the precious creation of God that we are? How dare we? Woo! And I wish I could tell you that I always treat myself in a loving and compassionate nature. I'm pretty good to myself, but the truth is I don't. I've been known to say things to myself under my breath or in my mind that I would never, ever, 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 ever say to somebody else. Am I right? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. I have mistreated myself in many ways, including overeating, undersleeping, underhydrating, undermoving, over TV watching, over criticizing, over comparing, over stressing, under spiritual practicing. I have allowed things into both my body temple and my mental temple that are not honoring of my divinity. And I suspect that most of us have done that, even when we know better, like I should. But what I believe is that once we get that glimmer of the awareness of truth, that truth of our being, then we do harm to ourselves less often, right? And with the awareness and it starts to become who we are and how we show up in the world, then we harm ourselves, we honor ourselves even more often. So we harm ourselves less often, and we honor ourselves more often. Does that make sense? It made so much sense to me when I wrote it down yesterday. So I'm hoping it makes sense to you too. So then the question becomes, so what do we do now? Where can we get it? Okay, yeah, we're all that, right? So what do we do? What are some tools to using this awareness to build a life with joy? Well, let me share with you what Mark Anthony Lord, who wrote the book we're using, said. He said, your conscious mind is a magnificent tool that can be used for good. It is a miracle-making machine from which you can create absolutely anything you want if you believe. Why not believe that you are a divine expression of the all-good, infinitely brilliant, and forever expanding God? Why not? Yeah? So first what we have to do is to become aware of those times that we are not loving ourselves, when we are not honoring ourselves. And then we negate those thoughts or those actions by consciously choosing the opposite. Let me give you a for instance. This is a silly one, but whatever. Maybe you all never do this. But when I do something kind of uncoordinated, like I trip or I drop something or, something like that, okay, hold that thought. So, I got to tell you this story. I had no idea I was going to tell you this story. This is an instant karma story, but it makes sense. Okay, so I go to the ladies' gym, Curves, and I like Curves because they play rock and roll music and I can dance and boogie and all that other kind of stuff. But when I went in this one day, they weren't playing any music. They were having a class and there was no music. And I got myself a little wrapped around the axle. And I was like, could you play some music? And they're like, no, we're having this class. And I'm like, oh. So I left, like in a huff, right? And I go and I sit in my car and I go to pull myself in the car and I got a hold of the steering wheel and I go to pull myself in my car and my hand slipped and I punched myself in the nose. Instant karma. So now I'll come back on script. Okay, so you do something like that. You punch yourself in your nose and you're like, oh, you're such a klutz or something like that. As soon as you become aware of it, as soon as you become aware of that negative self-talk, stop yourself and say something along the lines of, that isn't the truth about me. The truth is I am grace in expression. Now, does that seem a little awkward and a little weird? Yeah, you know what? It does in the beginning. This is new stuff. This is a new way of being. But what we are trying to do is to use this powerful, incredibly powerful conscious mind that we have to, for lack of a better word, reprogram the old thoughts and the beliefs that don't serve us any longer and that were never true in the first place. So even if you're a little uncomfortable with stopping yourself and affirming something better, do it anyway, because it's worth it. Another tool that Mark Anthony suggests is to write a love letter to yourself. A juicy, sappy love letter about how wonderful and amazing and lovable you are, and really get into it about how fabulous you are. And after you've written it, read it. He had another exercise, actually Reverend Marjorie alluded to this too. He does suggest this, is to stand in front of the mirror, completely naked, and admire everything about your body. And give thanks for everything about this amazing physical being that allows us to walk through earth as we are. Admire everything. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate it for you right now. It is a lovely exercise, but probably one better done in the privacy of your own home. So here's just a couple of tools. Watch what you say. Counteract it when you say it. Write a love letter to yourself. Stand in front of the mirror and give thanks for this body that you have. Some of the tools that you can put in your tool belt of self-love. But now we're going to do a brief visualization. So Mark, I'm going to ask you to come up here. And we're going to put our focus on loving ourselves madly. All of ourselves. And so Mark is going to noodle a little bit in the background. I'm going to invite you to relax. You know how to do this. Begin to put your focus on your breathing. For the next few moments, there's nothing you need to be doing. And know that as you go through this exercise, you're perfectly safe. You're here. And in your mind's eye, bring to mind you as a small child, 3, 4, 5 years old. Before you became discerning, before life started really showing up. And look at yourself, the little you. Look at that child. Look into those eyes. You gently put your hand on their cheek and tell that child how precious they are. How deserving they are. Tell that child how much you love them. And embrace that child as the loving and precious being that it is. And now bring to mind your present self, whatever age you are now. And do the same thing. Look at your present self with unconditional love. Look into your eyes and see the divine. Look lovingly at this person who has lived the life you have lived, and